All right, folks, you are listening to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world, and you are part of this great miracle wherever you are. Shalom and welcome. So great to be with you here. We are in the Sephira count, which means we are counting 49 days to the 50th day of Shavuot, from the second day of Passover. It's a very special time of the year. It's a time of beautiful weather. And today we went berry picking, my family and I, in the land of Israel and Judea. And it's so fabulous and was so special and such great views. But at the same time, we're still so much struggling with challenges. In the last week, 2 Israeli soldiers were killed. In the last week, a couple that were working in the embassy in Washington, D.C. were murdered, gunned down. And there's been 2 Houthi missiles. And we're still reeling from the murder of Tzehela Gez, a mother that was on the way to giving birth. There's a lot of challenges out there for the Jewish people. There's a lot of challenges, but at the same time, we have more of an internal strength than before. You just see it out there. You just see how much togetherness, how much beauty, and the continuing building of Jerusalem. In many ways, it's a test for the nations. Are they going to stand in Israel with Israel? And even in Israel in this tough moment? Or are they going to, line up with all the haters that are showing their ugly face today? And we have many more challenges also for our own Israeli government. Is it going to act with clarity and with the proper rage, the just rage that needs to be acted with? So let's actually ask some folks in the Israeli government first. Here's my review of Prime Minister Netanyahu's message after the murders in Washington, D.C. Here's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Last night in Washington, something horrific happened. A brutal terrorist shot in cold blood a young, beautiful couple, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Yaron had just bought an engagement ring for Sarah. He was planning to give it to her in Jerusalem next week. They were planning to start a new and happy life together. Well, that tragically did not happen. Yaron and Sarah weren't the victims of a random crime. The terrorist who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th. On that day, thousands of terrorists stormed into Israel from Gaza. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burned babies alive, they butchered 1,200 innocent people and took 251 innocent people hostage to the dungeons of Gaza. A short time afterwards, Chancellor Scholz of Germany visited Israel. And after he saw the horrors, he said to me, "These Hamas terrorists are exactly like the Nazis." He was right. And if they could get away with it, these Hamas terrorists would have slaughtered every last Jew on earth. For these neo-Nazis, Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to destroy the Jewish state. They want to annihilate the Jewish people who've been in the land of Israel for 3,500 years.
This phrase that was just uttered by the Prime Minister is very important, and one that's not uttered enough, and that is that the Jewish people's claim to the land of Israel goes back 3,500 years. Very important claim, and that one that we need to talk about, substantiate, and make clear all the time. In general, I think that when people refer to Israel, they should just say Israel, the third Commonwealth. It's very important for us to always say to people, yeah, we've had a Jewish state here 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We're an ancient people. This land is part of our DNA. As my friend Yehuda Cohen says, it's not just part of our DNA. It's not our motherland or our fatherland. It's our spouse. That's part of our very language, of our whole makeup of who we are is this land. And I haven't even heard the Prime Minister say it often enough that really we're an ancient people on this land. And that Palestinianism is here to erase Israel. And really, you have two options. It's either a Zionism or Palestinianism. It's either occupation or liberation? Which one is it? Is Israel a thief of somebody else that existed here beforehand? Or the truth that there was no Palestinian country here beforehand, that we're an ancient people, we're the indigenous people of this land. Yes, there are other peoples in this land that have a connection to it, but not like us. They certainly have an inferior claim. And it took these acts of violence against Israel for the prime ministers to start using that language. We are a 3,500-year-old nation on this land. Very important moment in Israeli talking points in the Israeli narrative.
I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize. Well, for 18 years, we had a de facto Palestinian state. It's called Gaza. And what did we get? Peace? No. We got the most savage slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. You won't be surprised to learn that Hamas thanked President Macron and Prime Ministers Starmer and Carney for demanding that Israel end its war in Gaza immediately. Hamas was right to thank them, because by issuing their demand, replete with a threat of sanctions against Israel, not Hamas, these three leaders effectively said they want Hamas to remain in power. They want Israel to stand down and accept that Hamas's army of mass murderers will survive, rebuild, and repeat the October 7th massacre again and again and again, because that's what Hamas has vowed to do.
I just want to say that it's important to be honest, which is the state of Israel also was the one that created the idea of a Palestinian Authority and has fed that monster for all these years. So, I feel like the prime minister here is talking internationally, and he's telling world leaders, hey, we don't want a Palestine on this land. It's a reward for terror. It's a terrorist state. But he might as well be saying that to the Israeli lawmakers and him being part of that. He voted for the disengagement from Gaza to create a PA-run state in Gaza, and it became a Hamas state. And I just wish that he would say honestly, and I was part of that as well. And I'm walking back our mistakes. The way he says it is like, I'm just walking back your mistakes. How dare you talk about creating a Palestine and Israel? And I think it would be more healthy if he would say our mistake, because our country did this. Our country was part of this, and we're walking it back. And now we don't want to hear from you that we should continue on that bad path. But I think it would be more honest and more powerful if he said, yes, our country made the mistake, and now we're beginning a process of rolling back both the disengagement and the Oslo Accords.
I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history. Now, these leaders may think that they're advancing peace. They're not. They're emboldening Hamas to continue fighting forever. And they give them hope to establish a second Palestinian state, from which Hamas will again seek to destroy the Jewish state. And mind you, it's not going to be a state free of Hamas. When you establish a Palestinian state, we've seen it. The radicals take over. Iran sends them in, and they take over. So don't give us this talk. It'll be a peaceful Palestinian state. It won't be. But the hypocrisy doesn't stop there.
I just want to make a point that one of the big changes that has happened in Israel since October 7th, I would argue not enough changes have taken place. But there is one big change, and that is the majority of Israelis just don't believe in a two-state solution anymore. They don't believe in creating a Palestine in our land. They don't believe that the jihadists want peace with us. And it's important to remember that even the IDF and the Israeli intelligence believed that Hamas was suing for peace and wanted economic prosperity, not to make war. So they were fooled. They were actually fooled. And I hope that Prime Minister Netanyahu, again here, I would love it if he would say, we too were fooled. Our own intelligence community was fooled. I wish he would say that, because I think it would be more honest and actually more powerful if he would say, yeah, we fell for that stuff as well. He's like, don't give me that stuff that they want a peaceful state. I always thought so. I have always said that they don't want a peaceful state, and people in the real nationals camp in Israel, the right wing camp, have always said, don't give away Gaza. We were protesting the Gaza giveaway in 2005 because we said they're going to make a terrorist state. So he's now saying that to the international community, to France and England. Fine, but say it internally as well, and make it clear that we're walking back the bad policy of Oslo.
These and other leaders have bought into Hamas's propaganda that says Israel is starving Palestinian children. And not only is Hamas putting out this lie, a few days ago, a top UN official said that 14,000 Palestinian babies would die in 48 hours. You see, many international institutions are complicit in spreading this lie. The press repeats it, the mob believed it, and a young couple is then brutally gunned down in Washington.
And it's important, once again, to add that Israeli leaders also mouth some of this, right? Yair Golan, the leader of the Israeli left, has said that, he said this week that the Israeli army has turned killing babies into some kind of sport, and was then roundly criticized. But he says that. He said it. And then you had Israeli former Prime Minister Olmert saying that Israel is close to making war crimes. So you have people in our own world here, that say, that are our own Israel, that say these kind of things. And it's really a sickness that we have around the world, but we also have it here in Israel. And it's important to say that. It's important to say we have that sickness inside as well. Yair Golan, his statement exactly was, sane countries do not kill babies as a pastime. Holy cow, what a sicko. So he's not any, the international community folks that say this kind of stuff, they can't be, they're not sicker than Yair Golan, but indeed we have that disease within, and it's important. I wish, again, that the prime minister would say, yeah, we have those kind of sick people amongst Israeli leaders as well. And by the way, the Arab media has spread that Yair Golan, leader of the Israeli left, has said that sane countries do not kill babies for sport, intimating that Israel does that. It's all over the Arab press that our leaders are saying that. Again, had Prime Minister Netanyahu said, listen, we have sick people amongst ourselves as well who are contributing to the Hamas narrative, I think that would have been good. I think it would have been healthy to put a little sunshine on the evil that lurks within.
So here are the facts. Since October 7th, Israel has sent 92,000 aid trucks into Gaza. That's right, 92,000 aid trucks. That includes 1.8 million tons of aid. 1.8 million tons of aid. More than enough food to feed everyone in Gaza. Yet as we had let the aid come in, Hamas stole it. They took a huge chunk for themselves. The rest they sold at exorbitant prices to the Palestinian population. And then they used the money they stole to recruit new terrorists to continue their war against Israel. Our goal from the start was to get food to Palestinian civilians, not to Palestinian terrorists. So we consulted with our American allies. What do we do to prevent Hamas from looting the aid? Well, together we devised a mechanism to achieve this goal. American companies will distribute the food directly to Palestinian families. They'll do so in safe zone secured by our military. And this will allow us to complete our goal of destroying Hamas while enabling aid to reach the civilian population. We'll complete the construction of the first distribution zones in the coming days. Ultimately, we intend to have large safe zones in the south of Gaza, and the Palestinian population will move there for their own safety while we conduct combat in other zones and receive humanitarian aid there without Hamas interference. In the meantime, we authorized letting trucks enter Gaza to provide for immediate needs.
Okay, this is a bone of contention here in Israel. You're letting food into Gaza. The Hamas want a humanitarian crisis. They want it, and you're trying to stop it. I understand that. But the right way to have dealt with this was to have immediately blown a hole in the fence between Gaza and Egypt, allowed refugees, non-combatants to run out, set up tents there, use the international community. The UN could actually do something for a living and set up some tents over there. And instead, we're still allowing a population that largely supports Hamas to be fed. Food will still get into the hands of our enemies and our haters. And you're not getting that population out as the Trump vision allowed, and which is the right thing to do. So I'm not so happy about this idea about feeding the Gazans in Gaza. This was a moment to clean out the population that supported Hamas, that from which the next generation of combatants rise. It would have been better to push them out, secure their humanitarian needs in the Sinai or somewhere else, and maybe Turkish Cyprus, for example, or Syria or North Africa. Many places could have already taken in those refugees and destroy the Hamas. Fighting a war for a year and a half with a 400 square mile sandbox is ridiculous and very, very challenging, demanding, and draining for Israel. And we're continuing to fight that war. It would have been smart to not feed the bad guys, as Prime Minister Netanyahu admitted. He fed the bad guys for a long time. No matter if it was foolish, it was our foolishness. It would have been better to take care of that fast, open up that corridor for refugees to leave, strike hard, and defeat the enemy, and of course, assume governance and sovereignty over Gaza and fix the mistake, roll back the mistake of the Gaza disengagement, where Israel left and destroyed its own communities. We've got to come back and rebuild our communities. That would have been proper justice, vengeance, and fixing of the bad policy of the disengagement.
Yesterday, I think more than 100 trucks went in. More will come in today. I tell you this, no army in the world has ever gone to such lengths to provide aid to the civilian population in the midst of intense combat. And Hamas, of course, opposes this. It shoots Palestinian civilians who want to leave for safe zones, and it shoots Palestinian civilians who want to prevent Hamas terrorists from looting the aid trucks intended for them. As for the hostages, we'll do every effort to secure them. I'm ready for a temporary ceasefire to get more out, but we demand, and you should demand, that all of our hostages be released, and released immediately.
Demand? We should demand that the hostages be released? Demand from whom? People around the world listening to this message should demand? They should demand that the hostages be released? Nobody should demand it. You should secure it by use of force. Destroy Hamas. Send in our teams. Cut out the electricity, the fuel. Choke them, starve them out, force them out of those tunnels. Demand? Who are we going to demand from? Who's going to do it for us? Who do you think is out there to demand from? I can't stand this language. Demand. You should demand. There's nobody to demand. That's why we have a never again Jewish state, because we were supposed to never rely on the Gentiles or anybody else, any other countries. Demand. I demand of you. Go get the hostages. Bring them home. Destroy the bad guys. Finish this sucker off. Make it clean. Make it fast. Make it furious. Make it devastating. Devastate the bad guys. Let's not demand from the peoples of the world to secure our hostages for us. That's not happening. That's not happening. I thought we already learned that in World War II.
And so should every civilized country demand this. We're in an intense seven-front war that was launched against us by Iran and its proxies. Sometimes in war, accidents happen. One such incident happened the other day in Jenin, and thankfully no one was hurt. Our military has expressed its regret over the event because we don't target civilians or diplomats. We target terrorists. Exactly the opposite of Hamas. They target civilians, ours, and they hide behind civilians, theirs. They use them as human shields. That's a double war crime. But I don't hear that coming from any one of those countries that criticize Israel. For those who say that Israel stands alone, I say we're not alone. Justice stands with us. The truth stands with us. History stands with us. And so do countless people around the world.
And the God of Israel stands with us. the God of Israel, who brought us through providentially through the last 3,500 years of anti-Semitism, and we've survived because of ingenuity, maybe, luck, maybe. Let's call it what it is. The God of Israel. He has defended us. He has protected us. We are the apple of his eye. He wants to bring us through this challenge as well, has brought us through the Holocaust and the rebirth of the Jewish state. Say it. Just say it. Say Baruch Hashem. And believe me, you'll have a lot of people more allied with you when you say it. Say it. The God of Israel. He protects us. Look at those books right behind you to your right. Look at those books. That's the Mishnah. That's the Jewish law that comes from the Torah. Say it. Own it. To your left is the Zohar, the mystical teaching of the mystical exposition of the Bible and Jewish life, how to live with mystical consciousness. It's okay. Don't be afraid. Say it. The God of Israel protects us.
Who can tell the difference between right and wrong, between good and evil. I want to thank all of them. And I especially want to thank President Trump and the American people for their forthright stand with Israel and with the Jewish people. Together we stand, together we'll triumph, and we'll see the victory of civilization over barbarism.
Okay, Prime Minister Netanyahu, I think in many ways a very powerful message, clear. He's raging against the international community, the UN and France and other countries that are calling for a Palestine in our land. He's saying it's a very bad idea. He's saying that we're going to feed the Gazan population that has moved south and so that we can fight the combatants. He fell short of talking about Israeli control of Gaza, and I think that's definitely a mistake. He should talk about Israeli control of Gaza. He should talk about, and I know that people are embarrassed or scared or think that people will say, oh no, we it's all about land and we're trying to steal the land. No, we gave away Gaza. It was a big mistake. Now we are protecting our land, reforming our natural borders. Gaza cannot be a Palestinian state. It cannot be a Hamas state. It's got to be part of Israel. So he fell short of that. But he did call out anti-Semitism. He definitely came up with a plan to separate out the combatants from the non-combatants. One could agree. One could disagree or agree with how he is implementing that. I'm not sure it's exactly a good idea. I think we should be a little bit more real about who we're dealing with in Gaza. That's for sure. So that we don't have the same attack again, and that we don't send these problems to our children through the generations. Prime Minister Netanyahu is fighting valiantly. There's a lot to critique, but at the same time, he's standing up strong and trying to fight the enemies of the Jewish state in Israel and around the world. At the same time, anti-Semitism grows, jihadism grows, and Israel's got to be even more ruthless against the real bad guys so that we could be good to the good guys. All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher show here, and so good to be with you. I hope you thought that what Prime Minister Netanyahu said made sense, and my additions as well. Let me know what you think. It's easy. Write me an email, yishai@yishaifleisher.com. It's really easy to reach me. It's not always easy to get a response because it's busy, but if you write a smart and useful letter, then I'll do my best to think about it and to help promulgate your ideas as well, because we got to be sharing each other's ideas, listening to one another. And I so appreciate that you're listening to my show today. If you care about what we do here at the show, don't forget easy ways to support. buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. Okay. Now, that was Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he has to say things diplomatically. But I got to speak with the one and only Brigadier General Amir Avivi, who's held many important positions in the IDF and now is the head of the Bitchonistim. I talked with him about our tactical situation and our strategic goals vis-a-vis Gaza and this war. Check this out. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you gave a lecture tonight. How was your lecture?
It's very good in Rishon.
What was it about? What were you talking about?
What is needed to secure Israel for generations to come? It's exactly our subject.
So let me ask you this. Tell me a little bit about the return to war. That's what we're reading inside the news, that Israel's back, and I'm hearing all my friends are being called up. Are we back at war full time, or is this just a tactic to try to get the hostages?
It's not just a tactic to get the hostages. The overall plan includes eradicating Hamas as a governmental and military entity, conquering all of Gaza in 2 stages. But there is an understanding that as we move forward to reach the goal of eradicating Hamas, there will be opportunities to reach a hostage deal and get the hostages out. The army says clearly it's much easier for us to operate and do the job without hostages. When you have hostages inside, it endangers them. You have to act very carefully. This also endangers the soldiers. So we would definitely like to see the hostages being released and then being able to finish the job. What Israel is not going to agree is to have a deal where Hamas stays in power and we don't eradicate them. This is not an option. This is why it's so complicated.
Here's that video that I wanted to show.
Has launched a major new military operation in Gaza, seizing key areas with tanks, while continuing air assaults, reportedly killing dozens of Palestinians. Codenamed Gideon's Chariots, the offensive includes taking control of strategic areas. Troops advanced on Deir el-Balach, where ground forces had not operated during the war that began last October 7th. The troops reportedly advanced into eastern Deir el-Balach in a coordinated operation amid artillery and air cover. Mobilized forces carried out what were called extensive attacks as part of the opening moves of the operation and expansion of the campaign in Gaza to achieve all of the war goals, including the release of the hostages and the defeat of Hamas. According to Israeli defense officials, the operation would see the IDF conquer Gaza and retain territory, attack Hamas to prevent them from grabbing humanitarian aid supplies while moving Palestinians from northern Gaza to the south. Amid the warfare, progress has been reported at mediated ceasefire and hostage talks in Qatar. Defense Minister Katz claimed the IDF offensive brought Hamas back to the table and to reportedly propose a 2-month ceasefire with U.S. involvement. Israeli and Hamas delegations traveled to Qatar last week after the release of American-Israeli hostage soldier Idan Alexander as part of a direct agreement between Hamas and Washington and just ahead of President Trump's visit to the Middle East. The Qatari media is reporting that the proposed 2-month ceasefire would allow time for talks to bring an end to the war. According to the Israeli media, the proposal would free about 250 Palestinian security prisoners, while Hamas would hand over a list detailing the status of all remaining living and dead hostages on day 10 of the proposed ceasefire. Prime Minister Netanyahu has reportedly authorized the Israeli delegation to stay in Doha amid what is termed cautious optimism for an agreement.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused. I'm hearing a lot of different things, and I think that all of us are a little bit confused. Are we here to fight this war to destroy Hamas and to hold on to this land? Are we here to make it so that the Gazans cannot live in Gaza anymore and will be moved out? Or are we here to negotiate with Hamas for some kind of agreement, some kind of settlement, some kind of ceasefire, getting some of the hostages out, getting a list out? It all sounds like it's unclear. And that, I think, is one of the problems with our leadership about this war. We've been fighting for a year and a half without clarity. What is the goal of this next offensive?
So I think that, that in the history of wars, you don't have many wars where clear goals of war have been set. In this case, there are crystal clear goals of war: to eradicate Hamas as a governmental and military entity, bring back all the hostages, and create a reality that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza. And Israel, throughout the war, hasn't changed the goals. The goals are clear, and all of them need to be reached. Now, at certain points, we prioritize different goals. There is a moment where we say we'll slow down the pace of destroying Hamas, but we'll release hostages. In other cases, we say, no, we'll push forward with destroying Hamas and not releasing hostages at that moment. Now, people ask me, I've been fighting for a year and a half. What changed? Why now it's different? What's different? And I say, everything is different. When we started the war, we started without enough munitions. We started with the understanding that we're starting offensive in Gaza, but we have to fight in the north. We have to keep the forces fresh in order to move them afterwards to the north. We cannot really concentrate just on Gaza. We had a different leadership in the army and also a different Ministry of Defense who thought that it's not a good idea to conquer Gaza, and it's not a good idea to apply a military control over the Gaza Strip. They were opposing that. We had a different administration that very fast, already in January 24, was pushing for a ceasefire and stopping the war. And now we are in a completely different reality. We have a new leadership, new Minister of Defense, new Chief of Staff, new commander of the Southern Command. They're all aligned. They understand that Hamas needs to be destroyed completely, that we need to conquer the area, and they are not afraid to talk about military occupation, about controlling the humanitarian aid, about dealing with detaching Hamas from its society and from the humanitarian aid. We have a different administration. We have plenty of munitions. Everything changed. And now we can really, really focus on the Gaza Strip and really push three main efforts that can help us, both eradicating Hamas and bringing back the hostages. One is completely destroying the leadership of Hamas, and we're doing that systematically. From the moment we went back to operate after the last ceasefire, in the first attack, Israel wiped out almost all the civil leadership of Hamas. Now we saw how Israel killed Muhammad Sinwar and Shabana, the commander of the Rafah, and many other operatives. The leadership of Hamas in Gaza is being systematically destroyed. As we are doing that, we approved plans to conquer the Gaza Strip. Now, it's very different to do raids or conquer. The way the IDF is operating at the moment, we saw that in Rafah, we conquered the area of Rafah. We destroyed all the infrastructure there. We killed all the terrorists. And now Rafah is empty, completely in Israeli control. And Israel is doing the same now in other areas in the center and in the north of Gaza. Every area that the IDF is conquering, the IDF will stay there and will systematically destroy all the infrastructure, all the terrorists, all the people will be moved from this area. It will be flattened and in control of Israel, and we're moving systematically into the Gaza Strip, sending a clear message every day that you don't bring us back the hostages. It's another day where we conquer more areas and completely destroy all the infrastructure and the terrorists in these areas. And it's going to intensify all the time. There will be a moment, I believe, where Hamas will say, wait, stop. Let's do a deal. They'll need a ceasefire. This will be an opportunity to get back the hostages. Israel is not going to agree to stop the war, but it will agree to do some kind of a short ceasefire, maybe a month and a half, to get the hostages. But
Hamas is not going to give up all the hostages. If you're going to play that game of the hostages, they're never going to give them all up. They'll always keep somebody.
Yeah, so I think that probably there will be a deal for half of them, which is a lot. And then you'll have to continue pushing forward until there will be a moment where you will surround them in a certain neighborhood and negotiate, after conquering 80-90% of the Gaza Strip. You want to reach the point where they understand that it's game over. They have only two choices: or give us the remaining hostages and get out of Gaza alive, or die. There will be no other choices. And I think that I see a resolution both in the army and in the government to reach the goals of war. And yes, unfortunately, we have part of the media and a small part of the society that is, trying to stop the war, saying it's just about the hostages. It's not about, winning the war. It's not about destroying Hamas. And this is not the case, because Israel, yes, has a responsibility for the hostages, but also has a responsibility for the whole society and for the people who live in the surroundings of Gaza and for our soldiers. And for all those who paid with their lives, to defend the state of Israel, we have to win this war decisively.
And
We
for
have
the
to reach
future and
all
for
the
our
goals.
children and for the next people not to become the hostages.
Right, exactly. You cannot let Hamas rebuild itself.
By the way, I was with Minister Ben-Gvir in the United States, and he had a great line that I thought was very nice. He said, if I was one of the parents, I would act like them. But I am a parent. I'm a parent not only to my children, but to the whole Israeli society. I got to make sure that this doesn't happen again to the next child and to the next person. I got to protect those people. I thought that was a good way of saying it.
Yeah, definitely. It's really clear that any member of family of a hostage, will say we have to do everything to get them out, and we do. But we also have to reach, all goals of war, because if radical Islam wins, meaning if Hamas stays in power, this is not going to just impact what will happen in Israel afterwards and the way we'll be perceived in the Middle East. This is going to impact the whole Middle East. This might bring a collapse to moderate Sunni states. So when people talk about the prospect of signing a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia, normalization and so on, the Saudis are saying to Israel in a very clear way, you need to destroy Hamas, you need to win
Right.
this war. They are not going to normalize relations before Israel wins decisively the war in Gaza, because the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't only endanger Israel, it also endangers them. And they want to see a clear victory, and they cannot allow themselves doing peace agreements while there is still a war. They want to see an end to the war, but not a surrender. They want to see a decisive win.
So you told us something that's important. You said to us that the situation is different. We don't have as much of a northern battlefield right now. There's new commanders in Southern Command. There's a new defense minister, and there's also a new American president. Those are very important points. However, there was some lack of clarity this week. The Americans are providing all the artillery and all the armament that's needed, and that's amazing. Not like we had under President Biden. They're not telling us to stop the war, quite the opposite. They're saying take care of the war. And also President Trump has hinted many times this war should have never happened because we should have never given away this land. But at the same time, there is another change that's happening, and that is the closeness between President Trump and Qatar. And Qatar is an overt supporter of Hamas. They have said it every which way. They support the hostages, taking the hostages. They support October 7th war. They support every aspect of it. And they say it through their mouthpiece, which is Al Jazeera. And here comes the president of the United States. According to the White House, they signed a deal. President Donald J. Trump secures historic $1.2 trillion economic dollar commitment in Qatar. And so was this a victory for Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, and jihadism, the relationship that President Trump made with Qatar? Did you hear in intelligence forums that like the Hamas and their friends are celebrating at this moment?
I don't think that Hamas would have come a day after this visit to the table to negotiate the release of hostages if they were celebrating. I think that they expected that maybe in this visit the president will stop the war in Gaza, will call for a Palestinian state. They had different ideas. He refused to meet Abu Mazen. He didn't talk about a Palestinian state. He didn't say that we need to stop the war in Gaza. On the contrary, talks about relocating 1 million Gazans to Libya. So they're very unhappy from the results. But I think that, Israelis, they tend to look at the American policy just through Israeli eyes. Like everything America does is, has to do with Israel. And it's not the case. We have to understand that President Trump, when he entered, he started his presidency, the situation was that the U.S. has a debt of $37 trillion, 122% debts to GDP. That's almost double than Israel. The U.S. has, a gap in its trade of almost $1 trillion. compared to what it exports, compared to what it imports. And there is inflation. The dollar, I remember, I think 25 years ago when I bought my first apartment, the dollar was 4.3, 4.5 shekels. 25 years later, it's almost 3.5. It's unbelievable. If the American economy was healthy, probably the dollar would have been now 8 or 9 shekels. So I think there is a big concern in the administration about these economical issues, and this is why this trip was mostly about signing big agreements and bringing, money into the US, but it was also about sending a very important and clear message to China and Russia. We are back in business. We are the bosses here in the Middle East, and especially talking about the Sunni world. I think this act, of involvement and leadership was very, very important. Having said that, I'm very disappointed with the decision not to continue attacking the Houthis and leaving us alone to deal with this. Don't think it's a good decision. And we are following, the talks with Iran, expecting them to explode at a certain moment and hoping that the president will realize that there is only one way to deal with them. And this is a massive airstrike on their nuclear sites.
So you are saying that the Qatar agreements are necessary for American economy, but you do recognize that the Trump move towards complete alignment here in the Middle East with negotiations with Iran and the cessation of attacks on Yemen are not the way to go, and we have to defeat this jihadism instead of kind of accepting it as a fait accompli and making a separate peace with it. No, we have to keep fighting them. But here's my question.
This is what I said. I'm very unhappy about the Houthis, and I think we have to attack Iran, and we have to do it together.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a tough question, because I see that you're handling tough questions very well. My question to you is, our leadership, both the prime minister and also just the way our system operates, is it ready to make big decisions? For example, to take out 1 million Gazans and send them to Libya or wherever else? Like, this is a big thing. A ship's got to come, pick them up, or it's got to go through through Sinai and through Egypt. Like, is there the will to take care of business? I have heard Prime Minister Netanyahu talk about Iran. I remember it was in 1999. I was a stagiaire. I worked at AIPAC in Washington, D.C., and I heard him speak about the challenge of Iran. Same prime minister, same country, Iran. And that was more than, that was like almost 30 years ago. And so it's like, are we going to actually make those changes? You get a green light from President Trump. He's like, take care of it. Yeah. Here's my vision. He released a video showing how he thinks Gaza should look like, right? But it doesn't happen. And the sense is that Israel's not ready to take on those big grand steps. It's not ready to put 1 million Gazans on some kind of boat and send them to a different place. It's not ready for that kind of level of change. It's not ready to take on Yemen by itself. It's not ready to take on Iran by itself, even if it could. So that's my question to you. Do you know the leadership? You know these people intimately. You know what they're capable of. Is our country capable of, let's not call it radical, but revolutionary changes in the situation in the Middle East? Are we capable of making those big changes?
So I can tell you from deep knowledge, first talking about Iran, that Israel is in full readiness to deal with the nuclear sites of Iran, even if we need to deal with this by ourselves. Israel is not going to miss the opportunity, this historical opportunity, after we destroyed all their proxies, after we destroyed their air defense. And we know that this is one shot, and for us it's an existential issue. So at the moment, Israel is saying, okay, let's, wait and see what will happen with this diplomatic talks with Iran. And already we are hearing the Iranians saying clearly they're not going to give up anything. They're pretty much laughing at the administration. So Israel is waiting and hoping that, at a certain point, President Trump will say, okay, this is, not going anywhere. And either will give Israel the green light to attack or lead an attack. One way or another, we're going to deal with this imminent threat and deal with Iran. As for relocation, when I came not long ago to the army and I saw the preparations that are being done, undergoing, it was amazing to see it. Who would have imagined the army, working on realizing the plan to relocate the Gazans. And it's happening, and by the way, we're relocating them daily. Not big numbers yet, hundreds. But for Israel, relocating 1 million Gazans, it's not a complicated logistical issue. We know how to do it. The only thing that we need, and this is something the Prime Minister said very clearly, we need countries that are willing to accept them. So when President Trump said, this is my vision, I want to relocate them, we need agreements. We need countries to give them visas. The motivation is there. The Gazan wants to emigrate. They need where to emigrate to. You cannot just put somebody on a plane if he doesn't have, on the other side, somebody that is willing to receive them. So if President Trump is serious, so are we. And we are very ready to do that. And Prime Minister Netanyahu said, we are embracing this plan. This is the day after for us. And we want to do that. But I think that it will become more relevant and more realistic once we conquer Gaza. You need to first take over the area and destroy Hamas. And I think that after this stage, there will be also a growing understanding globally that they need to emigrate, because Gaza won't be habitable. It will be pretty much completely destroyed because of the massive terror infrastructure that you have everywhere. And in order to dismantle it, you need to really destroy most of the infrastructure in Gaza. So there will be no other choice, and the world will have to agree and help also relocate them. So I'm optimistic. We'll wait and see.
All right, last question. I promised to let you go by 11, but so last question for you, and that is like this. I've heard, we all know that the Israeli army is highly motivated and very strong, and they really feel like there's a tremendous heroic and self-sacrifice ethos that's in our land. At the same time, this is one of the longest wars Israel's ever fought. I guess it's the longest, or depends how you count it. There was a few wars that lasted longer, but they were more like long operations. This is a war, and I've heard also rumors that there are some that the reserves aren't coming in at 100% anymore. People are tired. People's wives tell them, listen, either don't go into Gaza or don't go there or expect to stay married. And there's a societal pressure, not to mention the cost. At the beginning of the war, there was a lot of talk about the cost, and they stopped talking about the cost. Nobody knows what the cost is anymore. So are we still capable of going on this journey for another half a year or however amount of time it's going to take? Is our country economically, emotionally, societally ready for this continued operation? Or is there kind of a great need to return to bourgeois life, to get back to normal? Like, are we going back to normal? Can we handle this kind of continued warfare? You're a general. That's where you grew up. That's your career. That's what you think about. What about the average folks and the average Israeli? Are they able to stand this test?
So what are the options? If we really, push hard the coming 6-7 months and win decisively, we'll have a normal and quiet life, maybe for generations. If we don't do this last effort and really win in the coming 6-7 months, there will be no more normal life at all in Israel. And soon enough, we'll have to come back and fight again and again and again. So we really need to end this now, and we need to finish the war, and we are able to do so. And I think that, you see a very high motivation of the reservists to arrive, and I'm not saying there are not many reservists that have challenges and family and work, but the message of the reservists is clear. You call us, let us do the job. We want to finish this. We want to win the war. Don't bring us for another small operation, for going in and out and doing what we did in the last year and a half. We want to win this war. And for winning the war, they're more than happy to come and be part of this historical moment of defeating Hamas. And I think that the change of leadership in the army really, really created motivation. The chief of staff messaging and really empowering the army and the reservists and inspiring them. And this is very, very important. And we have enough people, we have enough soldiers, we have the munitions, we have the will to really win decisively this war. So, we tend to say that it's the darkest just before dawn. So, it's the moment we have to, push. It's hard. People have fought for a long time, some reservists for 500 days. But this is the moment really to put the last effort, and it's the responsibility of the government to make sure that this time we go all the way to total victory in Gaza and also, of course, in Iran. And if we reach that, we'll have a great future.
And Bezrat Hashem, with the help of God, of course. Brigadier General Amir Avivi, you've had many, many amazing positions in the Army. And you are also now the founder of a whole movement which people can connect with, especially IDF officers. And that's called the Israel Defense and Security Forum. In Hebrew, we call it the Bitchonistim, which is a term meaning the guys who care about security, the guys and gals that care about security. And you're helping change consciousness in Israel. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, folks, that was Brigadier General Amir Avivi, and he's confident that we can continue to fight this war. Let's do it. Let's get to it. And let's not, of course, forget that the Lord has given us that strength. Hashem is with us. And he says, clear out my land from the haters. Get rid of the haters in my land. Get rid of the idolaters and the haters and the Israel haters. And just keep in the land lovers of Israel and lovers of God who want to sanctify this land. And I have this theory that God doesn't tell the Jewish people, clean out the whole world. He just says, you know what? Just give me my cubicle. Just give me my little space in this world, which is the land of Israel. Give me a little bit, and you'll see that the whole world is going to get cleaned up. Take away the haters. Take away the idolatry. Take away the things that make this land darkened. And there'll be amazing light in Israel and in the whole world, All right, we're back here on the Yishai Fleisher Show. Thank you very much, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. And right now, as I am recording, let me go to the kitchen and see if I could find the one and only Malka Fleisher and surprise her and say, hello, Malka, how you doing in there?
Oh, man. Thanks for visiting me in my kitchen.
You're getting ready for Shabbos.
Yes, I'm getting ready for Shabbat. Here is some of the stuff we're going to have for Shabbat. One, first of all, we have a soldier coming, a lone soldier coming for Shabbat. And I called his mom. His mom told me he wants meat. So, okay, he's getting meat. We're going to have Shabbat tacos, or as we like to call them in our house, shabakos. And we're going to have...
Shabakos are my favorites.
Yeah, we're going to have like fajita strips, so that's more meat with,
I like me fajita with a little mahita.
Yeah. And we're going to have sweet corn, which is fresh in the market now. And we're going to have rice, and we're going to have gefilte fish, because we're still Ashkenazi after all. We have challah.
I love gefilte fish.
We have eggplant, and we have salad, and we're going to have crispy potatoes. Hopefully they'll be crispy. And we're going to have like a hot dog and potato little dish. This is not all for one meal. This is over the course of the whole.
You are causing great cheer.
Chicken.
You know,
chicken.
Malka, the Jewish people have a lot of issues, but as you speak of these great delights, it just feels like we're going to have the best Shabbat of all time.
Yeah, amen. I hope so. It's very beautiful weather right now. We're in like a especially nice weather time outside. I don't know if you already mentioned to your listeners that we went berry picking today.
I did.
So it was I have like a 5-degree range of comfortable temperature. If you get me under that 5 degrees or over that 5 degrees, I'm cranky. It's bad. I'm cold. I'm sweating. I need a shade. I need a sweater, right? But we happen to be right now in the 5 degrees of perfect temperature. So we went out and picked berries, and it was so nice. You have to check your berries, people, and make sure they don't have bugs because bugs are not kosher. But we had such a wonderful time, and all of the northern Judea was out picking berries today.
Oh, that's not exactly accurate. There was a bus of Russians
That's true.
that were not from northern Judea, Russian Jews, and they
Right.
were out picking, and they basically hoarded all the raspberries.
So, yeah, this bus, which is called literally Boris Tours,
Buddies tours. Come on.
comes out, and they're like, half of them are with walkers, right? So I'm like, oh, look. They're so... Oh, look at them go. Look at them go get the berries. In the meantime, I'm like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, looking at like my little, mulberry tree that I'm into. 7 minutes later, I go in. They had stripped bare in a obviously coordinated strategic attack. They had just eradicated the raspberry population.
Yeah.
And we talked to the owner, and he's like, yeah, the Russians come in, they totally annihilate the whole thing. But if you come back in a few days, it like new ones ripen over the course of, a couple or several weeks. So we're going to
Like the Jewish people.
Yeah, but I learned that when you see Russian sweet grandmas, you just elbow them in the face and you run past them.
Ahavat
Because
Yisrael.
otherwise you're not going to get a single blessed raspberry. That's the moral of the story.
Malka Fleisher, and this day with the great weather and the berries, they kind of gave you good feelings, right? They undid some of the tensions and issues that we're dealing with, a little bit of sweetness. And then after that, we also went to the Big Apple. After we picked raspberries, we went to the Big Apple. That is, of course, Big Apple Pizza in Judea, right? Big Apple Pizzeria. It was really good as well, right?
Yeah, it was super. We got all kinds of tasty pizza. I just want to go back to the raspberries and say that I was joking in case people are having a hard time with humor over the internet. I do not think that you should elbow sweet grandmas in the eye, and I'm happy that they had a wonderful day picking raspberries. And if I had to not get raspberries so that they could have raspberries today, then I'm happy.
Malka Fleisher, I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much. We're all looking forward to your delights of the kitchen that are going to also feed this wonderful soldier that we're having for Shabbat. And want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. May all the Jewish people have the same blessings as is coming out, the smells and the energies that are coming out of your kitchen for the holiness of Shabbat. You take material things and imbue them with spirituality, and we thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
All right, next is Leah Fleisher. She's my daughter, Leah Batzion. You've got a big Shabbat because you are studying for your big exams, and this exam is about Jerusalem and about what's called Eretz, which is studies of the land of Israel. Is that right?
Yes, it is. I'm very excited. This is pretty much my favorite subject. Not only just learning about the country, but learning about Jerusalem. I especially love archaeology, ancient history. Everybody else, the rest of my class, they're excited to learn about the British, but I love learning about Beit Rishon, Beit Sheni, First and Second Temple. And stressful test, but at least it's a subject that I'm happy with and that I'm excited to learn because it's important to me.
That's right. And I'm excited to learn it with you. I sometimes have the merit, the zechut, to be your study partner, and that's really fun for me. So I'm excited to learn all the stuff on the Holy Shabbat. So we're going to be learning about Jerusalem, the development of Jerusalem, the city of David, and the walls of Jerusalem, the first temple, second temple, and
sadly the destruction in the end. That's how the story ends.
That's how the story ends?
That's how it ends at this part. But, next year we're going to go into the rebuilding of Israel, how we came back. And Bezrat Hashem, in a few years, we'll put in Beit Shlishi into the history of Eretz.
The third temple.
Yeah.
Third temple, amen.
Amen.
God bless you, Leah Fleisher. Thank you so much. Daughter of Malka Fleisher, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. And we wish you a lot of success in your exams and a good Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom.
All right, last one. To schmooze right now is Elazar Menachem Fleisher. Elazar, 13 years old. I'm looking forward to playing ping pong with you on Shabbat and studying also Megillat Root and the cantillation, the laning of Megillat Root. We're very excited about that. Are you excited for Shavuot and Root?
Totally looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really awesome and really fun. We're either going to do it in Hebron or in Jerusalem, and it's going to be a really cool experience.
Did you have a fun time berry picking or eating Big Apple pizza?
I wait all year for berry picking. Last year we went a little late, and so there wasn't many good berries. But this year there were a lot of great berries, raspberries, cherries, all kinds of different mulberries. Those are my favorite by far. The long mulberries, they're so good.
Afghani mulberry. In fact, your new nickname is Afghani mulberry.
OMG, that's a good nickname.
Listen, I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom, Elzar Menachem. Thank you so much.
Shabbat Shalom, guys.
God bless you, Mishpacha Fleisher family, and I want to bless you out there. Another person who is like a member of my family is the one and only Ben Bresky. He is, how should we say, indefatigable, unstoppable, and always entertaining and always with wisdom. Today, he's got coverage on the story of the Bat Ayin, an amazing book written in Sfat, and also a community here in Judea named after that book as well. So here is the one and only Ben Bresky with the story of the Bat Ayin.
This is a moment in Jewish history. I'm your host, Ben Bresky, and this week we are going to talk about the Bat Ayin. And with me is Mordechai Gershon, who is a rabbi here in Israel. A couple years ago, I attended a memorial service for the Bat Ayin, and it was a group of guys. They got together, a couple people had guitars, and they were reading stories. And this is a guy from the 1800s, and yet in recent years, he seems to have gained popularity, and all over the country, every year they have these memorial gatherings. And in preparation for the interview, I thought, well, I'll read the book Bat Ayin, but then I saw that it's a 3-volume set, very in-depth. And so I have an expert, Rabbi Mordechai Gershon, who worked on the book. So you're here on the show to tell us all about this fascinating individual.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today for this show about the Bat Ayin, Rav Avram Dov Ber of Avrich. Great pleasure to be here. And it is, in fact, a 3-volume book, which has a tremendous amount of material. There is actually more material that we did not translate, and there is the potential for volumes 4 and maybe even 5. We're not up to that yet. We just wanted to publish the initial translation of selected pieces. And Baruch Hashem, it's been very well received out there by the wider public who's interested in Hasidus.
So who was this famous rabbi that so many people in our generation are reconnecting to?
Rav Avram Dov Ber of Avrich was very well known in the latter half of the 19th century. I'll get into some details in just a moment, but there has been this revival of celebrating his life. His yahrzeit is on the 12th day of Kislev. In recent years, it has become not just small gatherings, which you alluded to earlier, but at his kever in Sfat, there are thousands of people who come. Most notably, Rav Biederman, who's a contemporary Hasidic authority, Hasidic sage, I guess you can say. He leads a gathering every year on the yahrzeit of the Bas Ayin. Thousands of people come to connect to the tzaddik, the Bas Ayin. So who was the Bas Ayin? He's referred to as the Bas Ayin or the Bat Ayin after the name of the sefer that he wrote. Rav Avram Dov was born approximately in 1765 in Ukraine. He did not start a dynasty, so his name was not really well known outside of the circles of Hasidic groups that really studied his book, which we'll get to in just a few moments.
Now let's talk about some of these fantastical tales about, for example, the Sfat earthquake and how the synagogue collapsed. And I spoke to people in Sfat who told me that, yes, in fact, the synagogue is still there. There's a plaque on the wall. You can see where it collapsed.
This is true. This is probably one of the most famous stories revolving the Bas Ayin. I believe that the story is that in 1837, there was one of 2 catastrophic earthquakes that really decimated much of the community, maybe even half of the community in Sfat. So the Bas Ayin was in his shul. They were davening Rav Avram Dov was with his Hasidim in the shul, it was apparent that an earthquake was starting. So he called his Hasidim to join together with him next to the Aron Kodesh. At that point, he completely prostrated himself on the floor in front of the Aron Kodesh and in complete submission to Hashem, which is a big concept that he talks about. Bittul, this in general in the Hasidic books, there's discussion about nullifying ourselves before God. And he prays that they should be saved. And miraculously, a portion of the shul is destroyed in the earthquake, and the exact spot where Rav Avram Dov and his Hasidim were located remained intact. So half the shul or part of the shul literally collapsed, and the part where they were remained safe. And then the shul was later on rebuilt. But you can actually see the difference between the original construction of the shul and the newer construction. If I'm not mistaken, it was one of only two shuls that survived the earthquake. The other shul was the Arizal Sfaradi shul, right next to the mikveh of the Arizal, the mikveh and the cemetery. There's a saying that's attributed to Rav Simcha Bunim of Pshischa that if I wanted to, I could revive the dead, but I'd rather revive the living. He wasn't so into miracles. People like to tell miracle stories, and I think that they're fascinating. But I'll tell you what's even more fascinating about the Bas Ayin is not just that he was miraculously saved along with his Hasidim in this earthquake, but after the earthquake ended, he was not a youngster anymore. And in those days, he was already maybe close to 77 years old. He organized the search and rescue efforts to save whoever he could. They had to dig through the rubble to see if there were any survivors. And tragically, they had to take care of burying those who did not survive, which was a staggering number of people. So he had to restart the Chevra Kadisha, and he really led all those efforts. To me, that's a heroic story that he was at the forefront of saving those who could be saved and burying those who were not, and then subsequently rebuilding the city.
I think that is a good story and brings a little bit of reality to it.
Absolutely. His father was the Av Beis Din, so he was born into a rabbinic family. His father was known as a Magid. He would give inspirational speeches in the local community and surrounding areas. He's living in the time of the early development of the Hasidic movement. So Rav Avram Dov is deeply connected to the stream of Chernobyl Hasidus. Interestingly, when he was a young man of just about 20 years old, Rav Avram Dov became the Av Beis Din. He succeeded his father in Khmelnyk, Ukraine. He stayed there until approximately 1785. So he has really established himself not just as a Hasidic personality, as a Rebbe of sorts, a Rebbe of sorts, but really as a halachic personality. He was the posek, he was the Av Beis Din, and primary rabbinic influence in those surrounding areas.
So this is a well-established person in a well-established community, and he leaves it all later in life to go to the land of Israel, which was not so well-established.
Well, that's somewhat true. The community that he was in, Avrich, and then he finished off his rabbinic career in the Ukraine in Zhytomyr, which is a much bigger city. Zhytomyr was a pretty large city, comparatively speaking. Avrich, I don't know how big it was, but the truth is many of the towns and Städtlach in Europe were probably not super large by today's standards. But in 1830, he did make Aliyah, following a fascinating story. And he settles in Sfat, which was one of the Torah centers of Eretz Yisrael.
There's so many stories about him, and I'm thinking, are these all true? Are they based on truth?
That's a great question. I could tell you, as with any story, I'm sure that there are parts of it that are true and there are parts of it that are legendary, and it's hard to know. It's hard to weed out which parts kind of evolved as the story has been retold so many times. Regardless of whether all the details are true, the fact is that we're talking about a uniquely special person here who is a great tzaddik. I'll just tell you very briefly that when he was still in Ukraine, he encountered a shulach, an emissary, a messenger who came from Eretz Yisrael to raise money. The Jewish community was largely supported by the charity of the Jews in the diaspora. at that time, Rav Avram Dov asked this Meshulach, tell me, how is it in Eretz Yisrael? And he said, well, in Eretz Yisrael, it's such a holy place that even the rocks shine like diamonds. And when the Bas Ayin heard that, he became deeply, passionate and excited. He already was perhaps had a deep desire to move to Israel, and he said, "That's it. I'm packing up and I'm moving." And he and his wife settled in Tzfat. When they got to Tzfat, he was quite disappointed to see that the rocks were not shining like diamonds. Sometime later, in his travels in Israel, I don't know if it was in Tzfat or in another location, he actually bumped into the very same Meshulach that he had met in Ukraine, who told him about the rocks shining. And he said to the Meshulach, I don't understand. You told me the rocks shine like diamonds, and I don't see the glow coming from the rocks. So the Meshulach said to him, you need to be zoche, you need to merit to see the shine of the rocks of Eretz Yisrael. You have to be so passionate and in love with Israel that when that happens, you'll see the shine and the glow of the rocks. So the Bas Ayin was very into anava, to humility. It's one of the major themes in his book. So he went home and he did some deep introspection and contemplated the significance of Israel and why it's so important. And sometime later, a couple months later, I don't know how long it was, he made a kiddush in the community. So he said, well, I finally see the shine of the rocks of Eretz Yisrael. So it's a beautiful story. And I think it tells us something about how deeply in love the Bas Ayin was with this land.
That is a good story, and maybe people that come here also feel a similar thing. I want to talk about the earthquake, but maybe briefly about you. You came here from another country?
I was born in New York and raised in Long Island, New York. I came to Israel at the age of 18 for the first time in my life. I had never been here as a teenager or as a child. Really, I was taken with Israel already at the airport. I remember seeing the advertisements on the wall in Hebrew, and I thought to myself, wow, that's amazing. I thought Hebrew was just the language of Tanakh and the language of the Siddur, and it is an ancient language that has been revived and modernized. We're clearly living in very special times. So that was the beginning of my falling in love with Israel. That solidified over the course of my year and a half that I came here to study in yeshiva. I then went back to America for college studies at Yeshiva University, and ultimately, several years later, after I got married, my wife and I made Aliyah.
So maybe you can identify a little with the Bas Ayin in moving here.
Certainly. I had the deep privilege of being a community rabbi in New Jersey for 5 years before we made Aliyah, and I felt kind of torn about leaving my community and the people that I love and was serving. But Israel was calling, and I really believe that the future and the destiny of our people is here. And there are plenty of Jews in Israel to inspire and to grow with as well, not just in America. So I do deeply connect with the story of the Bas Ayin.
And how did you get connected with the book and the translation? This is the first ever English translation?
Yes, this is the first ever English translation of the Bas Ayin. The Bas Ayin itself was not such a well-known book. Unfortunately, Rav Dov Ber and his wife did not have any children. So there was no heir to continue the dynasty, the Avrich dynasty that Rav Avram Dov started. His Sefer Bat Ayin or Bas Ayin was kind of seen as his legacy in this world, and he had a nephew who published it, if I'm not mistaken, in Zitamir, and he had Talmidim who published it in Yerushalayim. We should talk about that maybe in a few minutes, the different versions of the Sefer that appeared. It was not a book that was widely studied until more recent decades. I got involved due to a dear friend of mine, Rabbi Zev Reichman, who's a Rav, very chashuv Rav in Englewood, New Jersey, and he introduced me to Rav Yisrael Meir Mendelovich, who is the publisher. He put the book together. He is a very special man who has been involved with the Bas Ayin for quite some time. He was turned on to the Sefer by the Tusher Rebbe from Montreal. He is probably one of the greatest authorities on the Bas Ayin. He's the one who published a critical edition in Hebrew that combines the Yerushalayim version and the Zitamir version. So he was looking for a translator of the book, and my dear friend, who's a common friend between us, Rav Zev Reichman, introduced us, and the rest is history.
And the book is being well received.
Yes, Baruch Hashem.
And how about the story of the Druze kidnapping? The Druze people are part of Israeli society and serve in the Israeli army, and we've met many Druze people, but there's a whole history in the 1800s.
Yes. Well, that is another miraculous story revolving the Bas Ayin. The Druze are dear friends of ours now, and we are very glad that they live in Israel and participate in the IDF, and we have a very warm and wonderful relationship. But unfortunately, it wasn't always that way. And in the 1800s, I don't know if it was all of the Druze. There are different clans and groups of Druze people, but at the time there was a very, very difficult relationship between the Druze community and the Jewish community, which lived in Sfat. At one point, the Bas Ayin was in Sfat, and a group of Druze bandits came and started looting the city and abusing the people there. They took the Bas Ayin captive. They took him back to their village, tied him up, and were planning to kill him. They were planning to murder him. But for some reason, they decided that they hadn't eaten lunch that day and they were just too hungry. So they left him tied up in one of the side rooms and went to go eat lunch. In the meanwhile, a competing clan of Druze who was in a feud with this group broke into the house and chased away the group that had taken the Bas Ayin captive. When they saw the rabbi sitting there tied up, they said to him, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, they took me prisoner, so they untied him and let him go free." That's another miraculous story about the Bas Ayin.
Well, I feel like we could spend a lot more time talking about him and telling stories about him and discussing his Hasidic philosophy, but the podcast would be very long. So maybe we should wrap up and have any concluding remarks.
Sure. If I could just share one brief anecdote about the Bas Ayin, talking about his love of Israel. There was one time shortly after he came where he was encountering some difficulties, and he contemplating, as the story goes, returning back to his community in Ukraine, where things were much easier for him. And suddenly he walks outside and he hears a big commotion on the roof, and he sees a woman taking the furniture from the flat roof into the house. So he says to her, "What are you doing?" So she said, "Well, we just started praying for rain, and that means it's going to start raining imminently. So I'm taking the furniture inside so it won't get ruined." So when the Bas Ayin heard that, he said, "Wow, this is the bitachon, the trust of the people of Israel in God. I have to stay here in Sfat no matter what the difficulties are." You know, I think he was a man who is deeply rooted in the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, of Chassidus, and a man who is deeply, deeply in love with Eretz Yisrael, who settled here and put down his roots here. We don't have time for it now, but I'll just mention briefly, he had a very special relationship with the Montefioris, Moses Montefiore, who dedicated quite a large sum of money to help the city of Tzfat at the behest of the Bas Ayin. So he was a tremendous community leader in Tzfat. He was recognized and respected by all the different Jewish groups, the Sephardic Jews, the non-Hasidic Ashkenazi Jews, and of course the Hasidic Jews of Eretz Yisrael. His book is a treasure trove of inspirational lessons that he draws out on the Parsha as he analyzes sources in Tanakh and Talmud and Zohar and other wonderful texts.
Okay, well, the name of the book is Bat Ayin, spelled B-A-T, in the edition you worked on, by Rabbi Avraham Dov Ber. It was all put together by Rabbi Yisrael Mendelovich, and you are Rabbi Mordechai Gershon, who worked on the English translation. And I appreciate you coming on and telling us about this fascinating person.
It's my pleasure. I hope that the book should be a great inspiration for everyone who reads it. And as they say in Hebrew, Zechuto Yagen Aleinu, his merit should protect us. And we should all get to see the return of all of Am Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael and peaceful times and happy times ahead.
Okay, this has been Ben Bresky for Jewish History Moment. Thank you for listening, and shalom.
All right, folks. Yishai Fleisher here. We heard from a lot of good voices. We heard We heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu. We heard from General Amir Avivi. We heard from Malka Fleisher, Leah Fleisher, Elazar Menachem Fleisher. And we heard from Ben Bresky. So altogether, just amazing lineup. And finally, of course, let's hear from Hashem himself, who teaches us in this week's Torah portion about the land of Israel, about the sabbatical year. Land of Israel isn't just a thing you just like, it's not just a thing you just talk about and appreciate and go to visit. It's also got laws that pertain to it. And there's economics, there's Jewish economics that pertain to the land of Israel. The seventh year fallow, let the land rest. The land in the Torah is a real entity. If you've ever watched sci-fi, you can get a feeling like there's this other kind of life form, and the land of Israel is another life form. This week, my friend Rabbi Yehuda Cohen was over the house, and he made a great point. He said the land of Israel in Judaism, it's not a father or a mother; it's a spouse. It's part of our beloved other that we connect to. It's part of our identity. So the land of Israel is indeed calling us home, and we're building it up in our time. So I want to wish us really to be part of that awakening of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. It is really awakening of God's presence in this good land. I just in my house, I just see a little plant just fell, so I'm picking it up. That's also part of the land of Israel. It's windy outside. It's beautiful. And that's the wind of hope and the wind of rebirth of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And therefore, God's revelation, and therefore also the Gentiles, the Torah international community, waking up to a godly message in our time. Even though there's much that wants to cover it up, there's great revelation at hand. I want to thank my great team, Yocheved and Mo and Ben and Tabitha and David and all the crew that makes this show possible. I want to thank them very much, and I want to remind you that there's great ways to support us, including buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. I want to thank all the supporters and the lovers, and I want to thank Hashem for the opportunity to broadcast His message and hit from His land to His world using the technology that He's put into His world so that we can get His message and His dream out. God bless you folks wherever you are. Stay tuned, stay strong, stay connected. Lots of love and shalom.